ATT Business Tax and Accounting Principles, May 2014, Question 3. My name is Omar Aswat. Deepsea Ltd was incorporated on 5th May 2019, began trading 1st of July 2019. Its first set of accounts were drawn up for the period to 31st August 2020. So if you checked out question 2, incorporation and trading have big effects for CT purposes, corporation tax purposes, and we are looking at CTSA, so corporation tax self-assessment. And incorporation doesn't really mean anything in terms of corporation tax. You come into charge once you begin trading. We'll look at this further. So began trading 1st of July 2019. First set of accounts were drawn up to the period to 31st August 2020. So if you think about that, July, August, we're looking at a 14-month chargeable accounting period, and for CT purposes you can't go more than 12 months, so 12 months plus 2 months, so 2 chargeable accounting periods. State with brief explanation Deepsea Ltd's chargeable accounting period for the purposes of corporation tax, and state again when Deepsea Ltd must lodge the tax return or tax returns, so the CT 600, due for the accounts to 31st August 2020, and that is for 3 marks in total. 2 for part 1 and 1 stating when Deepsea Ltd must lodge the tax returns due for the accounts to 31st August 2020. So I thought I'd use this question to do a bit of teaching as well, which is looking at when an accounting period begins and when it ends. So before we look at the answer, let's understand these concepts first, very important. And when an accounting period begins is found in Section 9 of CTA 2009. So Section 9 of CTA 2009. So you can look into that one if you ever get stuck. But there are 4 situations when an accounting period begins, and it is the earliest of commencement of trade, again keep in mind the earliest, so commencement of trade, so we have began trading 1st of July 2019, acquiring a source of income, so that doesn't have to be trade then. You can even open an interest-bearing bank account, for example, and that would mean the entity has acquired a source of income. Company becomes resident in the UK, becomes UK resident, so it might have been offshore. Company becomes UK resident, that's when an accounting period begins for corporation tax purposes. And finally, immediately after the end of the previous accounting period. So it can be any one of these 4 situations. Immediately after end of previous accounting period. Okay, so this is all found in Section 9 of CTA 2009, and it begins on the earliest of commencement of trade, acquiring a source of income, the company becoming resident in the UK, or immediately after the end of the previous accounting period. When does an accounting period end? Again, it ends on the earliest of, and these rules are found in Section 10 CTA 2009. So right next door to beginning, an accounting period ends on the earliest of, and there's a few here, the main ones being cessation or commencement of trade. So what that means is if you cease trading, accounting period ends for CT purposes, or if you commence another trade, that's when it ends, the previous accounting period. Company becomes dormant, so that effectively means the company has no source of income. End of period of account, so that is relevant here because the end of the period of account would have been first set of accounts were drawn up for the period to 31st August 2020. 12 months after accounting period beginning. So as we said, an accounting period for corporation tax purposes cannot exceed 12 months. And we'll have one more, ceasing to be UK resident. Okay, the additional one would be that the company enters into administration, and if a company has been wound up, there are separate rules to determine the accounting periods, and that's found in section 12 of CTA 2009. But just to recap, an accounting period begins on the earliest of commencement of trade, acquiring a source of income, becoming UK resident, or immediately after the end of the previous accounting period. An accounting period ends on the earliest of cessation or commencement of trade, the company becomes dormant, so the accounting period ends. The end of period of account, 12 months after the accounting period beginning, or the company ceasing to be UK resident, that would mean the accounting period ends. Now, in terms of the question, we have 3 marks. So the question is saying, state with brief explanation Deepsea Ltd's chargeable accounting periods for the purposes of corporation tax. So a chargeable accounting period only begins when Deepsea Ltd obtains a source of income subject to CT. The first chargeable accounting period begins 1st of July 2019 because that's when trade begins. So began trading 1st of July 2019. A chargeable accounting period can only be a maximum of 12 months. Keep that one in mind. That's the difference with sole traders and partners in a partnership, self-assessment, individual self-assessment, personal tax. That can be longer than 12 months, okay? And then you apportion. But for corporation tax purposes, a chargeable accounting period can only be a maximum of 12 months. Therefore, the first chargeable accounting period ends on 30th of June. So 1st of July to 30th June 2019 to 30 June 2020. That's the first chargeable accounting period. The second chargeable accounting period begins obviously the day after 1st July and ends 31st August 2020. Why? Because end of period of account. As we mentioned, end of period of account. And the final question for 1 mark is how many tax returns need to be filed? 2 CT 600s to be filed, and both are due 31st August 2020. So filing deadline would be 31st August 2020. That was for 3 marks. So we say half a mark for introducing the topic. Trade begins, half mark. Maximum 12 months, another half mark. Ends on period of account, 31st August 2020. 2 CT 600s to be filed, both are due 31st August 2020. That's for 3 marks.